happy with the way they've turned out. And, I got this filter here running to filter the water out because every day, once a day, I kind of run the water through this rock here so that I can get some of the waste in the rocks and the bacteria will start eating it. So that once I'm ready to switch over to it permanently, there'll already be filtration ready for it. You know, the bacteria will already be there so that the fish don't get a pneumonia spike. So, but I'll worry about that later. I'll probably have most of the fish out of this tank by the time I do that so that I can have them in a more, a larger tank. Because 75 gallons isn't going to be enough for 50 tilapia. So, I have tanks outside that I have prepared for that though. I got another 10-gallon tank here that I have to put some of the larger fish in or to separate them some. And then my 30-gallon tank here, I've, well, this setup has kind of gone through some interesting changes. I tossed like 5 or 6 red wriggler worms inside this bed to eat some of the leftover roots that have died in there. Because to be perfectly honest with you, whenever I take anything out, some of the roots get left behind and it gets pretty dirty in there. So, and you can kind of tell here that the water is draining kind of funny. And that's because, you probably can't see it very well, but there are roots growing through that hole. Made a big mistake putting tomato plants near the drain because the tomato roots get huge. So that's kind of a bit of a letdown in that sense. But no worries, because what I'm going to do, it's March 22nd right now, 21st. In about another month, if I can keep this going for another month and keep that draining, I can start putting stuff outside because it'll be warm enough. It'll be after the last frost. I can move all of these plants to my outdoor garden that I'm going to be tilling up here pretty soon. And that way I can kind of take all the rock out and clean it and figure out what I'm going to do with that hole there, whether or not I'm going to put a larger hole and maybe make a bell siphon for it. But all I do know is that these plants are going to move outside and that this rock is in this container is going to be kind of reworked so that it, you know, I don't end up getting into this problem again. So I like my method here with this container, with this grow bed that I use with this plastic piece there. So I might actually make another one of these grow tables to put on here and then possibly put this plastic container and make a setup outside with a 55-gallon barrel to house some of the tilapia when they get bigger, because I got plenty of space for that. I just didn't have as many grow spaces or grow tables. So I might even take this shelf out of here and build another one of these suckers that has a taller top so that the light has more room to raise. I mean, it's my first time doing this, so of course I'm going to have a lot of things I want to change to make things better, and that's kind of the problems that I've experienced. And the simple fact that I had to put these wood bars in here to keep this level up, because I was worried that this thing wouldn't be able to hold the weight of it, because it does bow. You can kind of see here. You see how it's not straight. It's bowing in the center, and that kind of scares me just a little. So that's what I'm going to do, I think, is take the shelf out of here and build a shelf that's a little more sturdy like this one here. I mean, this thing's rock solid. This thing ain't going nowhere. So I might do that. And I might be able to fit another 75-gallon tank right here and move this 30 gallons elsewhere. So, but we'll see how that works out. Right now I'm working more outside because it's starting to get warmer. I set up a new, well, I guess I can get my flashlight here. I can make another video on those, but here are my habanero / bucholokia plants. I haven't figured out which ones they are yet. They all have flowers on them, and they look like they're going to start producing peppers here pretty soon. So those are doing good. Here's some micro toms that I put up here, and that box is doing really well. And then over here on my windowsill unit, this is also flourishing. I got some microtoms seeds that I started, a lettuce, strawberry, more microtoms, microtom back there, lettuce, This is watermelon that I'll eventually transfer outside once it gets warm enough so that it'll start growing better. And then over here, we got a lot of tomato plants, which is great because I know you guys all were wondering about this, about how my tomato plants were doing, and I pulled them, all of them. The fungus that was growing on it was just getting worse and worse. I tried putting like alcohol on it and been spraying hydrogen peroxide on it to try and control it, putting hydrogen peroxide in the bin, and that still didn't work. I pulled the roots up and I saw that they were a little brown, like they got some bacteria on them or something, which the hydrogen peroxide was the cheap stuff, only the 3% kind, so it's not nearly strong enough to kill something that... It's probably good to kind of ward away bacteria, but to like do a full-on scale attack on that fungus, it was just not going to work, so they're gone. I was very upset because I had been working on them for a month and a half maybe total, but not to worry. You guys are going to see new tomato plants here. I'm going to take bleach and clean everything. I'm going to bleach those containers, I'm going to bleach all the plant clips, everything. And from now on, I'm not using the scissors to cut anything on a tomato plant. I'll snap them, because that's where it all started. On the set of tomato plants that were here, I used the scissors to cut some of the dead branches, and it didn't work out. Another thing that I noticed is that I had 3 plants per 10-gallon container. Might have been too much, so I might drop down to 2 per container, or 1 per container. And I'm going to swap out these air pumps here because the air stones just kept getting kind of like engulfed by roots. Same thing with these systems here, the DWC grain bean plants. There's just not enough space for the air stones to kind of propagate the air throughout the tank because the roots just take over, you know. So these suckers here, they haven't grown too much. I'm going to move them outside too. Whenever it gets warm enough, I'm going to plant them in my garden and hope that they, take, which they should. They should be able to survive that. And they're already producing green beans, so I don't have to worry about having them grow up. And that's kind of the idea of that. And I got my strawberry plant over here, some lettuce. This setup here, I had cleaned up and got this all set up. I'm leaving this in here because I'm going to grow a lot of lettuce with this setup. But I'm not going to use these high-pressure sodium lights because these lights are more for flowering. And these plants lettuce doesn't flower, so I'm going to move the lettuce to the 5-gallon buckets because their root system won't get nearly as big as these green beans or tomatoes. And the air stones in there should be able to support just the one single lettuce container pod, which will be useful because then I can use these fluorescent lights because they don't need to really produce, anything special of light for the lettuce. And then I'll also set up more plants here. That I'm probably going to, since their pods are so close together, I'll probably just do lettuce on here maybe, or smaller plants. And eventually these will fill up with Buchalogia peppers, since they're further apart. I'll put the Buchalogia peppers in there. And then, what next? Oh yeah, I'm going to replace those air pumps. These are cheap air pumps from Walmart, and they're nice, but really, one of these 2 outlet things should go to 1 container through. There's like 2 holes or whatnot. 2 holes. There's one on this side and one on this side to put the tubing through. Really, you should have 2 air hoses going in there with 2 air stones pumping. I'm going to hook one of these suckers up to all 3 of them. It's a 6-outlet commercial grade air pump, and it's 20 watts, 1 kilogram, 120 volt. 45 liters per minute of air. That's quite a bit more than what those little air pumps do. And this has a 6-outlet manifold on it. I'm running out of time. 6-outlet manifold so that I can put 2 per container, and the tanks are going to be pumping. So I'll see you next week, guys.